Hello, everybody. If you're just joining us or if you're just joining us off the video, it's Jill, and you've never seen any of this before. We're running a completely free programming bootcamp teaching web development over at Class Central. And for those of you who've been with us before, hang on, let's get the desk a little bit lower. They'll be able to tell you that the whole point of this bootcamp is that it's as stressful as possible. It's just shouting at you all day. It's not the deal at all. We've designed this boot camp so that there's no attendance, there's no deadlines. You're still learning, you're doing a bunch of things, but in a way that hopefully doesn't hurt. Yeah. I see some folks in the chat saying, "Oh, I'm a little bit behind." That's not a big and somebody saying, "Oh, I've got to rush to catch up." I'm going to fussy. I'm not going to put you on the screen to fuss. I'm going to lovingly fuss at you. You don't. There's no deadlines. We're running for 6 weeks, but you don't have to finish in 6 weeks. We're not the boss of you. So we're going to do 2 different things today, and we're going to do them in a very laid back way. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the piano project. We're going to do that for not too long. I'm going to abandon you and make you suggest. Y'all are grown-ups. You can't make a grown-up do anything, and I don't think I'd want to. Ooh. I'm going to lovingly suggest that you finish on your own, yeah? And what we're going to do is for the piano one, we're not even going to do them. Isn't that evil? We're just going to look at them and we're going to talk about what they are. I'm not going to put any of the code on the screen because I'm mean. And then the main thing we're going to do is we're going to come over and take a look at the technical documentation page project. And before we start that, I'm going to go ahead and ask, can anybody think of any technical documentation that you've seen while we've been learning together? Or is there any technical documentation that you've used that you think is really useful? So an example of technical, go ahead and drop it in the chat if you don't mind, but of course we can't make you. And while I ask if you want to do that, and I'll just save those as they come up and go ahead and we'll take a look at them together later. Oh gosh, we've got folks from all over the world. Somebody's saying good morning. I hope it's not too early for you. We've got folks in Germany, in New Orleans. Oh, fabulous. I love how international this group is. We're going to get rid of this. And we're going to come into the Learn Responsive Design with a piano. I'm going to start our project. And the cool thing about this, and this is going to look a bit weird on the screen. Ready? Whoop, whoop. Is that we saw the responsiveness of this. Yeah? Whoop, whoop. And that's really the point of what we're doing today. Yeah. So I'm not going to do any of this hands off the keyboard, brutal. So the first thing it's asking us to do is something that's going to feel a little bit familiar to us and say, hey, build out the major structure of this page. Doc type, tell the browser what we're doing, add the HTML under the doc type, add the head as a child of the HTML right under it, and the body as a child of the HTML element under where the head closes. Okay. Look how terrible I am. I'm not doing any code. I'm just cheating and going to the next one. And so, okay, we're going to make 2 meta tags, and it's giving us less and less, and I'm giving you less and less, the cruelty of it. So the first one says, oh, do that meta tag that helps optimize your page for mobile devices. Do you remember that? Where it's like the width is set to 100% of the. Not going to give you the answer. And the other one is to specify the care set, the care set. And if you have to look it up, you have to look it up. But the hint is, I bet it's still UTF-8. We've been using UTF-8 the whole time. I mean, we're just talking about it. We're not even doing. Okay, so we do see what that viewport wanted with our device. Our width is equal to the device width. Okay. Ooh, I'm seeing some really good suggestions for technical document and some questions. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just saving these so when we get to it, we can talk about it. So here we're going to start making divs in the body with the IDs set to piano. You say, Jess, this isn't how we usually do stuff. You're not showing me the code at all. I said, yeah. And then it says, okay, let's make some more divs and set the classes so we can style them. I'm just skipping one to the next. Here, we'd go ahead and create 7 div elements for the keys. Yeah. So far this feels a lot like the Picasso one we worked on yesterday, doesn't it? Or the what was that first art one we did? A something art piece. The worst teacher possible. Oh, you know that thing we did 2 weeks ago. Okay, so we've got our piano and our keys. Ooh, and this is saying, make this weird looking class of black dot dot key. That's quite cool. Oh, Cassium, thank you so much, my love. You made a good, really good point. It was a Rothko painting we did. All of y'all are like, Jess, you did not forget Rothko in 2 weeks, and I'm so sorry I did. I've been working on something big over at this is actually not my job. This is my delight, not my job. But I've got a main job where we've been building some weird stuff out of WebAssembly, which is kind of intermediate, advanced stuff. You don't need to worry about it yet. Oh, that's a good question. If it's not weird to ask you all, are there any kinds of things that we're not going to cover during this boot camp that you would have liked to learn? I'll say, oh, Jess, I really want to learn about somebody mentioned Angular yesterday. I was like, oh, I don't think we've got plans to teach Angular. But if you could get a free boot camp teaching whatever in tech, what would you like us to teach you? That is not a promise. That's just me. That's just me being curious. I want to make sure that it doesn't sound like, oh, I'll teach you everything you want all the time, because I'm so sorry, I won't. But this just gives us a good idea of where to steer stuff in the future. Okay, so this is going to say, okay, cool. We're going to keep adding classes. And y'all can do that. Next step is saying, okay, don't forget to link to your style sheet. I disagree with this. Best practice. A good habit to get into is to do this right at the front, isn't it? Okay, but link to your style sheet. That's chill. We've got folks signing in from Florida. My love, you do not have to be on a class if there's this coming. Don't like prioritize. This is just programming. We're going to be here tomorrow. You take care of yourself first. Wow, that sounds threatening. I can't come get you. Cool. So for this one, I lied. I said I wasn't going to write any code. Remember that the HTML selector is going to touch almost everything visible on your page. Yeah. So you can also do this. You could cheat. I think you can also do this with the root selector. Is that true? Well, let's check. I'm going to see if that works. Okay. It doesn't want HTML. It doesn't want me to do that. Well, fine. So all right, we've done that. And this is actually a nice short one. There we go. Here's the not weird. Here's the stuff I wanted to take a look at, because while the technical documentation project doesn't use this, it would be kind of cool to use this in your technical documentation. Oh gosh, do you know what? Jeff is asking, is just the colon the same as root? I don't think it is. I think I needed to type root and didn't. I was trying to show off and did it about halfway, which sounds like me. So remember, and don't worry if you haven't gotten to this yet, or don't worry if you're just joining us, you're like, what? It's cool. Everything's cool. But 4 classes ago, at some dim time in the past, last week, there we are, last week, we did pseudo-selectors. Yeah, which lets us start pseudo elements using the colon before and colon after. And colon before creates a pseudo element that says, hey, I want to do something to the element before this one, which is the first child of the one selected. Whereas after says, hey, I want you to look for the last child in my selected element. And this is super weird. Yeah. This one. Let's just talk about this, just because I think this is kind of difficult language. We're going to do this one together. We're going to look at another one or two of these, and then I'm going to abandon you to do the rest of the piano by yourself. The piano is a little bit hard, but it's a nice short little lesson. It's difficult, but it won't hurt you. I just wanted to make sure we did this one because this one feels weird. For now, create a CSS selector to target all elements. Okay. So this star, and remember, I think it was Platypus who was really helpful for us. And Platypus was like, "Tiff, we call it a wild card." And we do call it a wild card. This wild card says, hey, whatever you got, anything. It's like saying a question mark. Give me anything you've got. And I'm going to set this rule for anything. And I was saying, okay, what's this look like? The two pseudo elements. Okay. So here, I'm reasonably sure that that wild card, Carlos, you beat me. No, gosh, that sounds like I'm being mean. You beat me to the punch. Oh, that sounds even more violent. But you got there before me. There we are. And you make a really good point. We're saying, you know what? We can either do this together by adding a comma, wild card, and colon after. Or if you say, oh, that feels a bit weird. I don't want them both together. Maybe I want to do different things to them. Or we could do the comma after the star, or we could do the comma after the star. Oh, that feels wild. That feels wild. Or I think we can do it like this as well with the curly babies here. Let's go ahead and set our box sizing to inherit. I'm going to copy and paste this just because if I'm wrong about the spelling, I want to be wrong about it twice. What do you think? We think like 20% chance that's not green. Oh, is it 1 or 2? Jolene's asking a really good question. It's like, hey, is it 1 colon or 2? And you're saying you're inconsistent with what you use. You know what? The next thing we're going to be talking about is documentation. So let's go to MDN. I'm just going to add 1. Okay, yeah. Okay, so MDN really likes 2. Will it work with 1? I think it'll probably work in regular old. I think it'll probably work on the web. But I don't know if. Let's see if. What if you, because y'all very helpfully were saying, well, I mean, we think he wants it together. Let's see if it'll accept just 1. Boop, boop. Oh, and you know what? One of you did point out that it wants the comma before that. Oh, y'all are as patient as you are. Charming. Let's try this one more time. And I really like that it gives you the answer down here, and I refuse to pay attention. So we've got that green stripe. Everything's chill. Oh, that's a really good point. I think you're right. We think that the 1 might be for pseudo classes like colon root, and the 2 is going to be for pseudo elements. That feels pretty reasonable. Oh, so selectors level 3, introduce the double. Oh, do you know what? Delabor, you are absolutely right. And the documentation even pops this out in bright blue and says, hey, y'all. The single colon is saying, yo, this is for pseudo classes. And let's get the documentation for pseudo classes up. And that's that button hover stuff we thought was so cool. Oop. Where am I? And then the dot before is for pseudo elements. Okay, y'all are sorry, Jeff said that as well. I completely missed you in the chat and didn't give you credit for what you deserved. So we've done the weird little hard bit of this. There's other hard bits. It just continues. Look at this. So we're going to add the color. We're going to keep building this out. That's really chill. But I'm going to abandon you and not help you with this at all. So the piano It's about 33 of these. A lot of it is, however, building out a lot of it is building out the piano, getting the classes. A lot of it's going to feel really familiar. And I'd say about 15-20% of this is going to feel weird. Speaking of feeling weird, let's talk projects. I'm not going to pick on any of you in particular, but I saw somebody was saying, "Oh, hey, I haven't finished all the projects." Somebody else like, "Oh, I'm behind on the projects." The projects are big and hard. It is super, super chill if it takes a while to get these. I promise. Yeah. Dominique is asking a really good question, but like, okay, well, what's the difference between a class and a pseudo class? Why doesn't it deserve to be a real class? That's a really cool question as well. So, a pseudo class are really good examples like hover. So let's find an example. So when I hover, when I put my help, what's my arrow? Hmm. We'll just say mouse. I was going to say my pointy baby, and that's not helpful. When I put my mouse over this element, over this div, it creates a visual effect where it turns gray. And this is happening because of a pseudo class and says, hey, cursor, Michael, it's called a cursor. Oh, thank you. Y'all, they let me teach. That's embarrassing for all of us. It just happens when you get a little bit older. You just forget all the words for everything. So when I hover over this, it's using a pseudo element to say, hey, when this element gets hovered on, and that's just sort of a weird extra element. So they deserve to be their own elements. So they deserve to be their own classes. They just don't usually exist like that. Think about it as extended release classes or extended release elements instead of them being fake. Oh, yeah. They are extra special elements or extra special classes in little tiny disguises. Oh, Carlos is giving me the actual answer. Pseudo classes collect a state, and pseudo elements are a part of that element. Carlos, do you want to teach next time? I mean, there's no money in it, but there's joy in it. Let's talk technical documentation. Technical documentation, technical documentation, technical documentation. I asked, oh, can you give me some examples of technical docs? And you're like, yeah. Tammy, after my own heart, was like, MDN? I'm like, yeah, MDN. I like MDN so much that I've got the Mozilla Therm, which I cheated. I worked there. I don't think they're giving out the thermoses. If they are, like, somebody give me a call, give me another. And Tsukino said, oh, MDN's a good example. Yeah. W3 schools, the Python documentation. If you go to python.org, and there's a lot of Microsoft ones. Oh, that's a really extremely good point. Carlos went a step further and says, react.org/docs/getting started, the quick start for documentation. And that's for a JavaScript framework. And Logan, I love this question. Logan's saying, well, I'd love to know more about what really is technical documentation conceptually. Is it stuff like MDN? I'd say, yeah. I think that counts. Or are we talking about the people who make a technology? So I work over it. So I'm doing a contract over at Suborbital, and they're super nice. So are we only talking about suborbital docs written by the Suborbital team? Those, I think all of these count. And there can be community made documentation as well. I'd suggest that a lot of these instructions in Free Code Camp, responsive design, that feels like documentation as well, doesn't it? I'd say any sort of recipes. I'd say sort of any of these recipes for better understanding what's going on count as documentation to me. Yeah. I've got a very loose and relaxed approach to shall we check out the documentation? Goodbye. And we're left with, and we always get this with our projects, don't we? We've got this big, terrifying, devastating, not devastating, relaxing. This can't hurt us. This cannot hurt us. We've got this big blank page. And it says, hey, you know what? I'd love you to, if you don't mind, our objective. And I like this because it sounds like we're spies. Do, 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 do. Your objective is to build an app that's functionally similar. And I think this is important because there's the temptation to make it look just like this. Let's take a look. So we've got a JavaScript documentation. We've got a column, a frame, I bet. We've got a frame. So we've got this column with different sections, and that it looks like, yep, these links are linking to different sections on the page. So what it looks like to me is this is one long piece of documentation, and that we've got links to all of the different sections of it telling us what's going on. And one thing I really like about this assignment is the ability for people to be really creative. Oh, Cassian, this is such a good point. And when you say, oh, you know what? When I hear technical documentation, my first thought is, you mean like the manual for my dishwasher? Unironically, non-jokingly, yes. That is technical documentation. That is technical writing. When I'm asking you to, actually, Free Code Camp is asking you to, when I'm suggesting you do, is be a little bit creative with this. It doesn't have to be for HTML. It doesn't have to be for JavaScript. It could be for how to put together and operate I'm trying to think of nerdy hobbies. I'm so sorry. I'm terribly uncool. So, perhaps you fly little drones. You say, I want to talk you through how to get started with your first drone and what's the troubleshooting and it could be how to use my elderly washing machine. Because you got to sort of hit the sides. And if you, at least with my washing machine, if you want to close it, you got to push the door up first, which is exhausting. Ooh, Michael. And I love y'all like cautiously coming out with these extremely correct things. And you're saying, hey, is this an SPA? Is this a single page application? And there's a lot of, what's an application? What's a page? An application, at least in my heart, so a SPA or a single page application or a single page web app, you'll hear a lot, tends to be a one page thing. So you don't bounce around to different pages. And it tends to do quite a bit. So what's a web page and what's an application is kind of a hard question. We don't have to have any JavaScript functionality on here. Yeah. So we can call it an application if you want. I think in a job interview, I'd probably call it a page instead of an application. Sugimoto's saying, can I do mine with crocheting? Yes, do it. I love this. Oh no, I'll try and follow along. And one thing that's really nice is when you're done with these, and you never feel done, go ahead and throw them in the projects channel for the Discord. That's what we call IRC these days, isn't it? Or chuck it on the forum. Like people love to fuss over these. So here we've got this, but this is the worst thing about the projects, isn't it? It doesn't give us those step-by-step things. It gives us here's your requirements. You have a good day. And this feels a lot like last time. I can see a main element with a corresponding ID of main doc. Is that the first thing I need to do, though? I refuse. I absolutely refuse to do any of this on my own, lazy as I am. We just did this with the piano. What do we need to do to start? You know what? I don't want to put this on the screen because it's too complimentary. You're giving me too much credit. But somebody's saying, you should, Jess, you should do some documentation on how to run a boot camp of the concepts we learned this far. I'm actually working on a blog post, which is a type of technical documentation, just about that. So this is the third time that Ramon and I have run boot camps. And I think altogether we've had right around 35,000 individual learners, unique learners, which is terrifying and delightful. Come on, y'all. I absolutely know what I got to do here, right? Right. Do I doc type? HTML. I bet. And do you know what? If you all have ideas, yeah. If you've got ideas about what you might want to do documentation for, let us know. I'm much more excited to talk about these than I am to actually do the structure of a web page that we've done a bunch of times. Cassie, I'm saying, oh, I kind of want to write real documentation. Is it rude to ask what thing you've made? So Cassie, I'm saying, I made something. I don't know if it's complicated enough to document. So famously in tech, one of the examples that people always use for technical documentation or technical instructions are to ask somebody to guide you through making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And we think, oh, making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is so easy. It's like 3 sentences. Get some bread, get some jelly, get some peanut butter, put them together. And for this exercise, you'll often see in tech, you'll see, oh, put the peanut butter on the bread. And because it's not specific enough, the person listening will put the jar of peanut butter on the bread. And like, oh, spread the jam on the bread. And the person takes their hand and gets some jam. And it's a really good illustration of how specific you need to be with documentation. You're going to hit the exact same problem. And I'm delighted with this because you were saying, oh, maybe I could do technical documentation about how to cook pancakes. And that's going to be wild trying to think, okay, how do I describe? And this is something I really like to talk about because this is so true. And in tech, we rarely think about this, but recipes are technical documentation. And I'm always really excited about that. Somebody said, Tsukino said, maybe I'll talk about crocheting. Crocheting, how to do crafting is technical documentation. You might want to do something computery or programmery if you want to include this in your portfolios. But if I was hiring, oh, Jeff's got an incredible point as well when we talk about knitting patterns are code. And this seems wild, but knitting patterns and codes are I'm going to make a replicable pattern that outputs a specific desired thing. And all y'all, usually when somebody says knitting patterns are code, folks are like, and all of y'all are like, yeah, they're obviously code. Linda's like, look, they're definitely code. Yeah. Oftentimes when I teach, I get folks who are purists who say, no, I need to do my technical documentation page on HTML or CSS. And you can't. I'm not going to stop you. It'll look fantastic. I trust you're going to do a great job. But it's nice having so many folks in chat who are like, oh, I'd like to do something weird. I'd be like, yeah, do something weird within the terms of the code of conduct. Like, don't get inappropriate, but get as weird as you like outside of that. Let's go ahead and let's it's not our user story. It's not our first one. But I think I need to do a little bit of work. I need to do a little bit of work before I can go ahead and do that main, because it says I need a main element. And I can't, I could probably just throw a main element down there. But we've gone through this so many times. We've learned so much about how to lay a page out. It would be me setting a bad example, and I refuse to. You say, Jess, you're setting a bad example anyway. You've put up your HTML element, and you didn't specify that the language is English. I say, okay, well, I'll specify that the language is English. You make a good point. Under the first child of my HTML element, yeah. The first one nested under it is going to be my head. Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to close that. Oh gosh, I'm helpless. I'm a babe in the woods. What do we put inside our head element? I can think of at least 4 things. Those weird pointy babies. Oh, Carlos makes a fun point and says, oh, you know what? We could make a mean element. And it sounds like I'm going to be mean to you right now, which is sort of reflexive. But there's a whole club of people who kind of set the rules that we can't make a mean element. So with JavaScript, you can go ahead and you can create a function and you can call it whatever you want. You could do whatever you want with it. And that's quite cool. But you can't, at this stage, We can't really yeah, oh, Jeff, you're making this more complicated. I love this. Where I'm just like, no, 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 we can't do this yet. I'm like, well, we can't really make up our own elements. And Jeff is like, oh, we could with web components. Web components exist. They will exist in the future. Oh, can I teach you a cheat? This is going to be some language you can use again and again when people ask you for something. Teaching web components are outside of the scope of this boot camp. Yeah. And these are things that exist. They let you do a little bit more creative stuff with HTML. But we're not going to learn about it. And the reason we're not going to learn about it now is just because it's a little bit more advanced than what we're doing right now. But this language, when somebody says, oh, can you add these videos to this website, but they haven't paid you for it? You say, oh, I'm so sorry. Video functionalities outside the scope of the project as it's been defined. Outside the scope is a very, very technical way to say no. Dominique, y'all are yelling, like lovingly yelling, saying, hey, 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 we got to have a meta something something UTF-8. Meta something something UTF-8 is the most relatable way to say this, so I'm going to use that. Meta carousel is like something something UTF-8 is absolutely how my brain works, so I love that. Where am I? Shep, after my own heart. You're like, Jess, you know what? We've got a CSS sheet. Let's go ahead and get that link too. Sandra is just coming in here for extra credit and saying, look, I'd like to see. And I love this very, very strong sort of product manager energy. Sandra's coming in and saying, look, y'all, we're definitely going to need a title, a care set, a viewport, and CSS reference. So linking to that style sheet. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm going to leave that up just so I do it. Care set, just so I do it. Like I'm going to wander off I would wander off. It would be amazing. I would start a new life. UFT is absolutely incorrect. UTF, that's right. We've got a title. Oh, heck, y'all are going to have to give me, you know what? Let's do the peanut butter and jelly. For non-native speakers, PB and J is often a shorthand for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Peanut butter and jelly. We've got our title. Where are we? Viewport. Oh, do you know what? I always forget MDN view. Yeah. Lazy as I am. I'm just going to go get it. Oh, show it to me. There we are. Thank you very much. Metaname, viewport, content equals width is equal to device width. Initial scale is 1. The happiest programmers are the laziest programmers, so I'll ask you to join me in blissful laziness. Jeff is saying, oh, what about AMP? Nah. AMP is a type of, what do we say in coding? It's a type of, it was a different way to route websites that Google was really pushing for a while. And a lot of people were huge fans of it. I wasn't a massive fan. It felt like it was sort of subverting HTML stuff. Oh gosh. Oh, Jeff, I thought you were saying let's talk about AMP pages, but you're saying, oh, sorry. Will PB&J work? Oh, there is a really good point that some characters need. I'm so sorry. I was so delighted to be like, oh, AMP exists. Yeah, that needs an escape. You're right. HTML entities. So these are, I'm so sorry, my loves. So HTML entities, Jeff, you are as patient as you, just really, really unnecessarily patient. So HTML entities are special characters in HTML where they're saying, hey, you know what? We actually use these as characters in HTML. So we want you to, if you use them, we'll let you use them, but we're going to create a secret code. So our pointy babies are a really good example. And I say, hey, you know what? We use our pointy babies. We use our pointy brackets, our chevrons, we use our pointy babies as part of building HTML. So when you want to use these pointy babies, Go ahead and type this instead, and that'll work. I'm so sorry. I was just on the moon where I was like, oh, yeah, amp was this thing. And you're like, no, no, Jess, you can't use an ampersand. All right. So sometimes you'll get like a weird error when you try and use a pointy baby in text or an ampersand or some kinds of spaces are new. There we are, a non-breaking space. But that's super. And a non-breaking space just means, hey, it's not going to push you onto a new line if you need that sizing. So PB and J, we're going to ignore these HTML entities for the moment. Initial scale. Do you know, where did you go? Was it Sandra who was just, Sandra, look at you being durably correct. It sounds like I'm picking on you, but this is a really good cheat sheet for me. You said title, care set, viewpoint, CSS reference. So link rel style sheet. That's super chill. And heck, we don't have our ref. We don't know where we're throwing our anchor to yet. And that's going to styles.css. You know, it's going to be wild is I think I'm going to run my test because we've written a little blob of code here. I think I'm going to run my tests and I think nothing, absolutely nothing is going to pass. And that sounds really disappointing to say, okay, you did all this work to get no points. Well, we did all this work to be able to build the structure to get our points. Y'all are so, no, nothing. We get nothing. That's okay. It's chill. It's chill. Let's come back up. Let's start. Now that we've got a little bit, we don't even have our structure. I'm lying. So under our head, the second child of our HTML element, we need a body, don't we? I mean, generally. Okay, that's cool. And now we're going to take a deep breath up, all the way up to the top. And now I can see a main element. I think the child of my body element, all fine, is going to be my main element. Everything's easy. Everything's possible. None of this can hurt us. Oh, Cassie makes a good point and says, when we're talking about these HTML entities, the characters that get weird, Cassium's like, I think UTF-8 handles these okay, but olden days, and I think we might have both been around for olden days, that you had to use these HTML entities, these ampersands and codes. I confess I do not know nearly enough about encoding as I might, but this is something where if you're interested in looking up at UTF-8, looking up encoding, I'm not trying to say you're wrong. You sound like you know what you're talking about, and I very rarely do. Where am I? Where am I? Where are we? Who are we? There we go. Cool. So here it says I can see a main element, even though when we're talking about visual representation, I can't see a main element in my preview. I mean, I can see it in my code. I feel okay. A main that has an ID of main doc, which contains the page's main content, the technical documentation. I think I'm going to come all the way down, deep breath, to our tests. And I think that if I run our I think at least this first one's going to give us a little tick. And this again, this feels wild where you're like, okay, a test passes and there's literally nothing on your page. And I say, tests are a little bit by little bit. The whole test-driven development really feels like what we're doing here. Say, okay, we've got these tests. We're going to go through and build this out so the tests pass, while also hopefully building out the rational parts of what's what as we go. I'm going to take a deep breath up. Whew. And I feel like we've got number one done. Within our main doc, so the children of our main, that's cool. We should have several section elements, each with a class of main set, and we should have at least 5 of those. Whew. I'm going to have to lovingly ask y'all, what are sort of the 5 sections for making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich I could include? While y'all are telling me what different types of stages I need for that, I'm going to go ahead and build out what it asks for. This section, and I've got the class, so not an ID. These all have the same class. We're putting them in the same club. An ID wouldn't really work here. Class is equal to main section. This is super chill. We're going to close that opening section tag. I'm going to come on a different line just to go ahead and sort of conceptually, it's more human readable. It makes me happier. I'm going to come in here for section. And do you know what I'm going to do before I do anything else? I'm going to come up a little bit for, ooh, I'm going to come down a little bit for, where are you? There we are, our save our code. Remember with that very first project, I was so cocky. I was like, oh, I can just refresh it and it'll save my code. And it just took all of my code away. So we've learned that you probably want to save your, and that's the Command S when you're working in Notepad++ or in VS Code. If you're working outside this tutorial environment, Control Save will make your day so much better. So we've got this section, and I'm going to have at least 5. Let's go ahead and do 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is feeling a little messy. Let's see if save my code. Do I have a little button for tidy up this code as well? Oh, I don't have a code prettier section, do I? That's a shame. So I think I've got a main doc element. I can see several section elements. I think I'm going to try these tests and just see. I'm going to come all the way down. We're going to run our test. I think maybe the first 2 are going to be okay. Oh, we got 3. We got, look at me. We've got 3 holding up 5 fingers. Baffling. Oh, we've got 4. Oh, just shy. So we've got a main element with the ID of main. We haven't broken that. And sometimes that happens with tests. Last time this worked and this time it doesn't, but it's safe. We have at least 5 section elements with appropriate class. All of my only section elements should have this class. And then I should have at least 5 of them that are descendants, that are children. And here, this is really cool because our next test tells us what we're going to do. I say, hey, the first child of each section should be a header element. Can I right click for format? Ooh, right click for format document made our lives better, didn't it? This preview still isn't doing us a lot, so I'm gonna make her a little bit smaller. Okay, so this cleaned it up. Right click and format document is our friend, huh? So here, I think we're gonna add a header, and we're gonna make sure each of our headers have some language. Deep breath. All right. Where are we? We've got our section elements. That's chill. Everything's chill. Okay, we've got a header in. Ooh, now this is challenging. So we should have a header element, but we're going to have 5 of these header elements. And we can use anywhere from H1 to H6, I think is the least important nested element. Which H1, H2, H3, H4, which one should we use for these headers? I've got a little bit of an idea, but I'm gonna let y'all tell me what you think, because I think I might make an H1 up here, because H1, it's not a hard and fast rule. Nobody's gonna make you have only, maybe your boss will make you have only one. But very generally, best practices, and best practices are those agreed upon rules. Oh, Jeff is suggesting they want an actual. Okay, so you're suggesting they want an actual header element, not like an H1, H2. I think. Do we think so? A header. Oh gosh, you know what? You know what? Cassium is saying H2, and that's what I was thinking in my heart. We put it. I got it. Let's do both. Because I think Carlos and Jeff are both making a good point. So Carlos is saying, yo, we need that header element. and then to put that inside. And Jeff is saying, you know what? I think this is true because we got this code font that they put header in this code highlighter. Let's try it and let's combine because I thought Cassia made a good point to say I'd probably use H2 and I think I want an H2 in these headers anyway. So H1, making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm going to put that at the H1 as a top. Cassium, you are durably correct. Where you're like, yeah, I figured we were doing a header and then maybe an H2 in those. Mercifully correct. Oh, do you know what? I'm going to be very unethical and ask you all an unfair question. Those of you who are also learning with Ramon, he never messes stuff up, does he? Never, ever. Never. Wait. We said header. Yeah. And then we said, you know what? We probably want an H2 inside that. Oh, header. Okay. Section element. Okay. I'm going to try it. I'm pretty sure that Ramon never makes any mistakes. And when he does, he's like super cool about it. And this head stuff. And the reason I'm picking on Ramon is I know he's not here today. I know he better be out having fun. So let's try this. Format our document again. Oh, look at this. Format our document. And Cassia makes a good point to say, you know what? It feels weird to be using multiple header elements on the page. Let's go ahead. See, Carlos is helping me pick on Ramon. No bugs at all. Perfect every time. See, do you know we work together in our day job and he's just like that. It's the worst. He's just right about everything and really, really cool about it. It's really, quite frankly, just disgusting. Just nice all the time. Let's check MDN header just to see, are we only supposed to have one of these? Represents introductory content, traditionally a group of introductory navigational aids. It may contain some heading elements, but also a logo, search form, author. Okay. Header. Okay. I'm not seeing anything. I'm reading real fast. Identical meaning to the site-wide banner landmark. Okay. So it can define a global site header, generally located at the site. Right? Otherwise, section in accessibility might make more sense. Yeah. Okay. You know what? I was like, no, I think for accessibility, we only want to use one. And this is right. And Carlos at the same time was like, Jess, as long as it's within a discrete element, we can have multiple headers and footers for sections. You're right. You're well ahead of me. And I'm not trying to say, oh, I think free code camp is wrong and I'm right. That would be the day. But this is saying, hey, if you've got an article or a section, you can have a header and footer in those as well. This is checking the documentation to write our documentation. Everything's fine. Let's come on back. I've got to recopy you. And what I'm doing is I'm coming into each of my section elements and I'm just copying and pasting that we're putting a header and an H2 in all those. Let's format this just so she feels a little bit more reasonable. There we go. And I think that I think only one of these would work. Because I think the next one, it should contain text that describes the element. Okay, well let's and you all gave me some suggestions for what kinds of things we need for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich documentation. Let me just go ahead and say ingredients. And by default, visually, our H2 is a little bit smaller than our H1. This doesn't have to be the case. We wouldn't change the H numbers to change the size. Oof, by heavens, no. What would we want to do if we wanted to make these H2s bigger than our H1? How would we do that? That's not how we spell ingredients, is it? Is that? You know what? English was a mistake. So ingredients, tools needed. Yeah. Ooh, tools for a peanut butter jelly sandwich. Um, assembly. Oh, Cassium, you're absolutely right. Where you're saying, look, if we wanted to change how big or small that is, we're going to go in and do that in the CSS. And probably starting with font size and font weight is going to be a really good way to do that. So we've got assembly, serving, and then troubleshooting. It's really important to have like frequently asked questions or what if things go wrong. I think that we're each section element should have a main section of an ID. Hang on. Number 4 is just this big chunk of technical language. Let's pull it apart a bit at a time. Okay. Each of the section elements should have a class of main section. Okay. But it should also have an ID that should correspond with the text of the header contained within it. Okay. Anytime there's a space, replace that space with an underscore. Number 4 felt, look at this, this felt like a real big, heavy, stressful thing. But I think that I'm trying to make it harder than it needs to be. I think when we come into our each section element with the class, this should also have an ID. Wait, the section. So it says each section element with the class main section should also have an ID. I think this ID goes in the section. Yeah. I think the ID here is going to be ingredients. So corresponds to, I think is a fancy way to say the same thing. Here in this section class, I think I'm going to make an ID again. And this one says tools. You know what? I'm going to make that N in tools needed capitalized. And here's where we get a little bit weird. Oh, Jeff, I mean this in the so this is weird because we've got tools needed. There's 2 words, there's a space. And this is saying, hey, go ahead and make an underscore to make that one word. Just because we can't put a space. What would happen if I left the space here? What would HTML think I was doing with the ID tools space needed? Jeff, I'm going to pick on you because you're saying, oh, Vim would be great for task number 4. Don't you make me teach Vim. Not yet. Vim is a way to interact with the code you're writing. And it's outside of the scope of the bootcamp. There we are. So we're going to come to this section. We're going to do an ID as well. This is super chill. Nothing is bad. Well, I mean, nothing in this project is that bad. I'm not trying to make everything sound too easy because some people say, oh, programming's really easy. And that feels like a jerk thing to say, especially to beginners. And some people say, oh, programming is so hard. And that feels really demotivating. What I always like to say is programming is very annoying for a long time. As long as you're okay with being a little bit annoyed for a long time, you're going to be just fine. Serving. And now we've got troubleshooting. Oh, yeah. Let me come in here. We're just going to do maybe 1 or 2 more of these. It's going to be super chill. One thing we're going to do is we're going to take a deep breath down because I think we're going to save our code because that's got our little green stripe saying, yo, I've saved your code. Everything's fine. And I want to run our tests because I want to see how much progress we've made. I really like this project-based learning because you can use these when you go to look for a job or go to ask for a raise or go to impress your mama. Or you can impress me if you like. But one thing I want to say is there's always the temptation to make these fantastic. And I love when learners do more and experiment and make these really wonderful and make them something they're proud of showing off. But there's somebody's pointing out, I paste my ID. You're absolutely right. I put my ID of assembly in the closing tag of the section 4. You are Durably correct. Let's run our tests again. Um, but there's an expression in English saying the perfect is the enemy of the good. You could be saying, oh, I want to do such a good job. I'm going to do such a good job. And you never really finish because you want to make sure it's perfect. One thing I love to bully learners to do is just do the bare minimum first. Just get all your tests to pass, get that little da-dum, you're done, because good enough is good enough. So go ahead and get that done. And then if you have time, then when you have time, go ahead and make it beautiful. Okay, look, we've got our main section element should have an ID. So we could even have the ID wrong. We'd get a point for that. Lovely. And then it says, hey, we get another point on our test checky one. Okay, Cassie, I'm saying, can we talk through the rest of these? Let's talk through the rest of these. And then I might excuse you to have an easy night or morning or afternoon, because there's a lot of these, and some of these are kind of technical language. I'm going to read these and I'm going to ask y'all to yell at me what they mean. So we did 4. Here I say the dot main section elements. So the class main section, all of these sections should have at least 10 P elements. And that's total. So at least 10 P elements distributed in these sections. Okay. We're cool. Ooh, and this is where maybe doing code documentation makes a little bit more sense, because it would also like to have at least 5 code elements total. Yeah. You say, oh, Jess, I don't know if we've done code elements before. I say, it's cool. It's cool. What do we do when there's something new? What do we do when we don't know what's going on? We can ask somebody, me if it's live, or you can come into the Discord, you can come into the forum. We're always there. You can look it up, or you can get weird. And this is something we don't know. So getting weird, I might say code element ambient. Yeah. It says, hey, do you mean the inline code element? I do mean the inline code element. Okay. So it says, hey, the code. And what this does is this gives us this gray highlighting just visually by default that we've seen before, actually in free code camp. This code highlighting is using the code element. And you say, well, where are we? In number 6, in the main section. So anywhere in main, I'd like to see at least 5 code elements. Yeah, you could do these for technical documentation. You could use code for them. And semantically and best practices, you really should write code in them. But I'm not a cop. If you wanted to say, oh, cool, I want some of the sections of the technical language for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to be involved in this code, I'd be like, yeah, I'm okay with that. Looking at number 7, it says, you know what? I'd like to see a list in here as well. So somewhere in main, I'd like to see at least 5 list items. And remember, you can't just wait, can you? Would that even work? Okay, so technically you can have a list item just by itself. Why am I grumbling? Why do I not like that? What's missing on either side of this list element that's kind of stressing me out? What is not semantically correct about what I've just written? And this is kind of an exception where, this is kind of where HTML being really fault tolerant kind of catches us out every now and again. So HTML is like, look, you haven't really done this correctly so far as correctness counts, but I kind of get what you're trying to say, and I'm going to meet you halfway. Y'all are like, look, you're stressing me out too, Jazz. Add a UL, so make an ordered list around this. Or add a UL, an unordered list around this. Thank you. Or an OL. Let's make an ordered list. And Logan as well, like, look, please, for the love of everything, wrap this in a proper list. You're stressing me out. Stressing me out as well. Jolene makes a really good point saying, do you know what? I don't think this is good for accessibility if we don't write this right. And I think you're very correct as well. Let's go ahead and I've made a little orphan list item. I'm going to come above it and create a parent, and I'm going to come under it and close the parent of an ordered list. And we see that sort of semantically pop in and work right. Let's format our document just a few. Okay, so that's calming me way down. So we should have 5 list items total. So that's anywhere in our documentation. That's okay. Ooh, we should have a nav element. Have we done? Oh, we must have done nav elements. I really like nav elements because these are really, really good for folks using assistive technology. And it's just a great example of, oh, somebody's asking, hey, so what is, let's go over the different parts of a list real fast. That's super chill. So an OL, let's get some space here as well so we can see what we're talking about. OL, or let's do a UL. So an OL or a UL is us saying, hello, I'd like a list. I'd like to start a list with this opening UL or this opening OL. And then with the closing one saying, I'd like to stop making a list. Thank you. And you notice that our UL doesn't have anything in it. Even if I say la, 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 I'm getting text. I'm not getting a list yet, even though I'm inside my list. I've said, start me a list. And it says, yeah, I've started you a list. But it's not giving me that little bullet point until I say, I'd like to start and end a list item. Here is a list item. So UL and OL are unordered list, so a list with just dots. An ordered list is please number these or letter these if you want to get fancy. Yeah, thank you very much. That was a really good point to say, oh, can we review lists is always really useful. So nav is one of my favorite, I dropped that in for y'all, favorite semantic ones because it carries so much. And this is saying I'm making an element and it's going to contain information on how to get around my page. So come back to our technical documentation and say, hey, I'd like you to make me a nav element that has the ID nav bar. And this makes sense. I'd really usually only expect one nav element. And our nav bar should have a header that contains, oh, the topic of the technical document. Do you know what? We have going to come all the way up to the top of our page, right under where we opened our main. We've got that H1. I think I'm going to wrap our nav element around this H1 we made saying making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm going to create an ID of nav bar. I'm going to copy that ID of nav bar and put it in the nav. I think that's going to pass these tests for me. Ooh, we saw a number. Yeah. I'm so sorry. Media queries are kind of scary. We are going to learn that in the piano lesson. Media queries are brand. Let's do number 15 together. Oh, can we just do it out of the blue? Or can we talk about our technical documentation should have at least one media query? Hey, look at this technical documentation for making technical documentation. So we're going to do this in the piano. Well, I am cruelly abandoning you to the fates to do this. And media queries are kind of wild. Media queries there are different formats. They're going to feel really scary. Show me the form. Have we done anything with an @ sign yet? Because this just feels wild, right? So this is, we're coming into our CSS, and instead of starting with a type selector or that full stop for stop, it's a class, or a hash sign for, oh, I'm very important. Here's my very own unique hashtag. I'm going to start with this @. And this is going to let me set CSS rules that only apply to specific browsers or specific things like, is this a printout? Is it a print preview? Or even things like, hey, what's the size? So it could be a media type, print, screen. It could be a media expression. So what kind of rules? And I think that's usually going to be size for us. Or we're not going to do this, I don't think. A set of CSS rules would be applied if the test passes. I don't think we're going to do that. That would usually be if somebody's using like oh, what are those very, very fancy monitors people have that are impossibly nice and saying, oh, if my user has one of those very expensive MacBooks, deliver this in a different way. Okay, so media types, all print or screen. Okay. Oh, and this gives us a format. Say, hey, if somebody's looking to print this out, make the font in the body 12 points. Okay, so this makes it a little bit less scary. Yeah. But I want to see. There we. I bet this is what we're going to use: width and height. Let's give me an example. Thank you for this example. I say, okay, cool. If the media I'm using is a screen and the width is 600 pixels, okay, then then make the background red. Let's do the. You know what? Let's cheat. Who doesn't love to cheat? I'm going to come in. You say, okay. I'm not seeing it turn. 600 pixels isn't very much. How do we do more than less than? Maximum width. Okay. Ooh, look at that. That's wild. Carlos points out, and Carlos is like, hey, don't forget that we could have minimum width as well. And this is saying, okay, so, hey, if the width of my screen is 600 pixels or less, please make the content in the body red. But I think so. I'm gonna pull this. I'm gonna pull for ages because I need to pull until it's bigger. Okay, so I pulled our preview until the viewport, the screen that was showing that, was wider than the maximum width of 600 pixels, and that turned red. Uh, black, black. Sorry, I'm telling you the wrong thing out loud. What about let's turn the background color red. And then as I stretch that out, it gets big enough, background color goes away. And I really like using a background color to test my media queries because it's real visible when it works. And I'm going to take this away just because I'm going to get rid of you, HTML. That is a very, very distracting background color. Let's make you pink. Ooh, this almost looks like a gradient. So I think this is a really relaxing way to look at something that's actually kind of hard. I think we can get rid of the screen and it'll still work. Hey, we can get rid of the screen and it still works. So media queries feel super scary. And thank you so much for pointing this out. The media queries feel super, super scary. This is a completely new format. We've got this @ sign. We haven't seen it before, but we can go to the documentation to make our documentation and copy and paste this and feel it out. And as soon as we start looking at this, as soon as we start feeling it out, it's going to hurt us a little bit less. Let's try this, and let's try this. Oh, excuse me, I'm terribly sorry. I'm going to come back into our HTML and I'm going to grab one of these IDs for one of these sections. Where's the ID of ingredients? Okay. And I'm going to change this media query saying, hey, and let's talk about what this media query says. Yeah. Get rid of the index. I'm going to get rid of my instructions. We're just looking at this. We're focusing. And I promise I'll let you go right after this. Oh, wait, ask me any questions you have, and then I'll let you go. Y'all are adults. You can go whenever you want. You know that. But I will end the lesson after we talk about this and answer any questions y'all might have. So here, let's talk about what this media query is doing. When I say the @ sign, I'm saying, hey, I'm probably going to do a media query. I said @media. Hey, I've got a media query for you. And what I'm really saying to my browser is, I want to talk to you about some rules for where this is being shown or how this is being shown. At media, hey, I want to talk to you, the browser, about when to show these and when to not to. The maximum width is 600 pixels. I'm saying, hey, if the viewport, if the screen, if the view screen this is being seen on, this content's being shown on, is 600 pixels or smaller. So the maximum, if it's more than 600 pixels, don't worry about this rule. I want you to take this, and I'm gonna change this to the ID for ingredients just to see the contrast a little bit more. I say, hey, I want you to pick this. And you could say, we saw the type selector, we saw the whole body. We can use a type selector, we can use a class, we can use an ID. Here, it feels like writing plain old regular CSS because we're writing plain old regular CSS, the weird stuff. Let's add some space. The space doesn't do anything, it doesn't hurt anything. It's just to sort of see a little bit better. The weird stuff, the new stuff, is this media query at media. And then us setting the rules inside these smooth braces. Say, hey, here's where I want to specify. Here's when I want these rules to happen. Then our good old fashioned curly babies. And then us writing regular CSS rules that live inside that. Weird, huh? And then we got to close that and say, hey, these are special rules that meet this media query condition. When I end this media query condition, when I get my closey curly baby, let's go ahead and let's do something else with CSS. Does that feel okay? I know media queries are super weird, but when we pull back and forth, we can see the visual representation of this highlight, this background color. When the viewport gets wider than 600 degrees, it'll go away. Wild, huh? Let's look at the instructions. Let's just talk through them. Come back. A lot of these, let's make sure nothing else is super new. Navlink, we've done a navlink before. Ooh, on regular sized devices. Ooh, on regular. So here we're saying, hey, when you click on a navbar element, you should link to the sections using these IDs. Okay, we should link using these IDs. I think we've done that very early on. But this one is saying, hey, on regular sized devices, laptops or desktops, your nav bar should be shown on the left-hand side and should always be visible to the user. And this doesn't mean it should go away on a mobile, but it might be, maybe it goes on the top for a mobile screen. Maybe it goes on the bottom. And this, yeah, Dominica, you were way ahead of me in saying, we've got to do this different styling in CSS for laptops or for for laptops or desktops versus mobile. Thank you. Can we use media queries for this, or is it better to control it with tools like Flexbox? This is such a good question. And then a question, a follow-up directly into my heart. Look at you saying, well, what's the best practice for media queries? And I think this question, should we use media queries or should we use Flexbox? Because one of the things we can do is make a media query. And I think a media query is it's definitely going to be what you want to use here, because number 15 says, hey, I think you should use a media query. But I think it's often going to be the best choice for saying, hey, when my viewport is smaller, maybe mobile sized, when it's smaller than I would expect to see on a laptop, please do this. And you could say, hey, I want to use Flexbox with this, but I want to set different rules for Flexbox depending on the size of this. So it's not an either or. We can use them together very happily. Oh, Carlos, look at you saying, you know what? We could use display flex or grid and then put the text in the two columns and you're completely right, use media queries to decide when these get served in what way. Dominique, I hope I'm not embarrassing you by pointing at you specifically, but you always ask just such fantastic questions. And all of y'all do as well. Yeah. And Cassie, I'm asking good questions. Like, okay, well, How would we use media queries on this docs page? The text is already pretty responsive. I think for this assignment, I'd probably use it to address user story 15, 14 on regular side, on big screens, on wide screens, show the nav bar on the side, on the left side. This is my left side. Whereas do something different. And it's implied to do something different. I don't think you have to. Yeah. Carlos, are you like a professional developer as well? So Carlos is saying, do you know what? There's a bunch of different device sizes though. So when we think about device sizes, it's not just I'm on a phone, I'm on a computer, but you get people who have, I confess, I'm one of them, giant, terrifying viewports on a big baby monitor, or you could have somebody on a smartwatch with just the tiniest babby screen. So really looking at what kind of size breaks you want instead of specifying, oh, this is how big a modern Android screen is. And that's not even a real thing. There's hundreds of different. But saying, oh, instead of saying, oh, this is how big my phone is and my friend's phone is and my laptop is, say, okay, let's think about these sizes and let's think about where it makes sense to break these off for your users. Y'all, I promised to keep you here for an hour and I've kept you here for ages. Let's talk homework. Yeah? So, as always, the homework I'm most aggressive about is please be as gentle to yourself as possible. Yeah? This is where I'm saying, oh, it's just programming. Oh, it can't hurt you. This is really hard. This is really stressful. Please be easy on yourselves as you do this. The big thing is there's no deadlines. I mean, there are assignments, but they don't have to be done at a specific time. Be gentle on yourselves. This is hard stuff. But then I'd love to see you just go ahead and get started with this. I don't expect you to finish this before class on Monday. That's a million years away. But just go ahead and at least do the stuff you feel super confident with. Say, okay, I'm going to get the structure of my HTML on. Well, I'm going to see if I can get, well, I'm going to see how many of these tests I can get through. And you don't have to make them beautiful. I've got a media query here. I bet, hang on, I'm going to run my tests. I bet if I run my tests, where's my media query one? Where's my media query test? Where's my you have a media query test? We even have one? Huh. I'm not even seeing. Oh, there we go. I just didn't scroll down far enough. Sorry. I'm still not scrolling down far enough. I think you're going to have to trust me just because I've got a pink bar at the bottom. We've got a check for your technical documentation should have at least one media query. Phew. And with that, I'm going to let you go. If we come back tomorrow, we're going to start an hour later than our class starts, but we're going to have Miguel join us and talk to us about Firefox Dev Tools. Miguel is extremely cool. So I really recommend either checking that out live if you've got time, but if you don't, it's going to be on the Class Central YouTube. Everything's fine. I'm going to let all of you go. Have a very easy afternoon. Bye, lovelies.